Hello, everybody. Today's call, May 8th, 2018, is with Joel Stewart. Joel is a relatively new entrant into the franchise brokerage business, but is pretty experienced in business and in real estate. And we're going to go through the certification call. Heidi's going to advance the slides. So we have, as usual, provided Joel with 2 survey results, assessment results, and in advance, so he's had a chance to look at them. And the purpose of today's call is to see Joel's understanding of the Navigator, of the behavioral sciences part of dealing with people versus the tactical, the procedural, and the processes of running a candidate through a particular pipeline or through a process from the time they become a lead to the time of potential closing or they're no longer a lead. So, Joel, without further ado, I'd like to, if you would, spend a couple of minutes talking about yourself, introducing yourself to the group, and then we'll get into the assessment results.
Sure. My name is Joel Stewart. I started out getting a mechanical engineering degree from Rochester Institute of Technology. Went into the Navy. Was a civil engineer corps officer managing government contracts, construction contracts. They had me down in the Gulf Coast post-Hurricane Katrina. So I was down there managing the reconstruction of the military facilities. After that, I got out. I got my MBA and went into commercial real estate and expanded that into a business brokerage, and then got into franchise consulting and realized that I found something that I really loved. So I knew from the start that I needed to find something to help me understand my candidates a little deeper. And when I saw this, I immediately kind of latched onto it. This seems like kind of the missing piece of what I thought I needed to properly service my clients.
Great. Wonderful. Okay, Heidi, let's go to the first one. Okay, so the first one, Joel, is a dominant associator, and the subordinates are the accomplisher, contributor, and then the influencer. So tell us what you think about this person.
Well, the accomplisher score, this person is somebody that's very driven. They're going to do something. The associator and the contributor score, the associator is very high, which means that they're probably good at managing teams with a strong kind of identity. So and very loyal. So if they kind of latch onto a franchise, they'll probably stay in that franchise. And given the accomplisher and contributor scores, my guess is that they would want to launch multiple territories. The influencer score isn't terrible, but it's not dominant by any means. I would probably say that somebody with this profile is, I would say that they would be looking for something where they could be helping others, where they can manage a team. I would even say this would be a good profile for possibly a master franchise or area developer, because they'd be managing a team of people. They'd get that good feeling that they're helping and assisting the other franchisees underneath them, and they would be feeding that accomplisher drive of needing to do something kind of epic. But they would also probably pretty good in a coaching field, business coaching, or even educational franchises. But I think that they'd need multiple territories, because I think that they'd get just as much satisfaction out of assisting their managers of their different locations and building up kind of the team and family through an educational franchise than trying to do something in the corporate world. So that's kind of my thought on it.
Very, very good. One thing that we have found is that, yes, there is a profile of a multi-unit operator, which is very different than that of a single-unit operator. The single-unit operators feed on the street. They're right there face-to-face with the customer. And the multi-unit franchisee profile is recruiting, managing, and motivating teams of people. And you're right, this is a great profile. The contributor will come out in the form of leadership. Because remember, the contributor is selfless, where the influencer is selfish. So anytime you have somebody with a real high influencer score up in the mid to high 80s, they can actually become very narcissistic. The world revolves around them. But in this particular case, they're very selfless. And that'll come out in the form of, what can I do to enrich the lives of the people I come in contact with? And that, coupled with the associator score being pretty good, means, they're going to develop very loyal staff, very loyal people, and they're going to be very loyal to them. So, I think that's a good assessment. What happens, and this person's accomplisher score is at 80. Once you start getting a little higher than 80, you move into the mid-80s and above, they actually become way too entrepreneurial to operate in a rules-based business like a franchise. And the reason is, it has nothing to do with whether they're a good person or a bad person. It's just that they don't necessarily want to follow the rules. They want to make the rules, or they want to enhance whatever it is that they come across. Make it bigger, faster, more profitable, whatever it is. And you wouldn't want, and we've got all sorts of stories from franchisors trying to deal with a high 80, low 90% accomplisher franchisee. And it's tough. It's really very tough. Rick Nanell talks about it from Window Genie, that when we first started, he realized after he saw the Navigator scores why he shouldn't have brought that person in as a franchisee. It gave him the justification, even though he did in fact bring them into the system. So the associators, the interpersonal skills, and what happens when the associator scores end up becoming very high, in the mid to high 80s, the interpersonal skills actually take over, and that individual can become excessively needy, meaning they need a lot of hand-holding, a lot of touchy-feely service from a franchisor. So in this particular case, not only taking it from the franchisee down to the consumer level of what kind of business is best suited for them, if we go back up, what kind of franchisor is best suited for this profile, and it's going to be probably a low-tech, high-touch franchise, because they're going to want to be a part of the family. And, it's really very interesting, because if you start looking at franchise recruitment ads, whether it's on the internet or it's on websites or whatever it is, the messaging that some franchisors use incorrectly is join our family, when in fact it's a high-tech, low-touch franchise. On the other hand, if it is a high-touch, low-tech, then join our family makes a lot of sense. Good. Okay, Heidi, next one.
Okay.
All right. This one, they still have a good accomplisher score, and the associator and contributors, they aren't nearly as high. They're not quite in the ideal range that we'd like. But given their drive and their ability to hire people that might be able to fill in some of their gaps, I still think that this is probably a good franchise profile. It seems to me the accomplisher really covers up a lot of sins when it's in the right range. With this profile, I would probably, with the low influencer score and the moderate contributor and associator scores, I would probably think that they'd be a good candidate for retail locations, restaurants, maybe some other type of retail outlets, something where there's corporate advertising or the brand itself carries its own weight. The contributor score being in the 70s means that they're probably going to want to do something that helps possibly a health-oriented restaurant. That'd probably be my perspective on this. I also think they might do okay with, again, with the kids' educational. Their associator's not too high. The contributor, though, if they're driven and they want to help, maybe something along the lines of one of the tutoring franchises, but maybe one that has a retail location, like maybe a Huntington Learning Center, where the name and the location helps sell it.
Yeah, if the candidate has that kind of capitalization.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on capital.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that we have found now that we've got 20 plus years of history, and we built it into the Navigator, is an adaptive mode, meaning when somebody's starting a life journey, such as a transition like this, into self-employment, their heads may not be on totally correct, totally straight. But as they move into something, once they've made the decision, the scores can actually be bumped up a couple of percentage points due to building confidence, due to understanding and becoming more familiar with the business model. And the same is also true, conversely, some of the scores can actually go down. So if somebody's way too entrepreneurial, it might mean that, okay, at this particular point in time, when they take the Navigator, where they're standing right now, they might be a little too aggressive because they might be nervous. That fire in the belly starting to take over, and it might be of influence on their scores. So when it's within a couple of percentage points, it'll come out to the franchisor when they do their assessment of this person. High potential, obviously, is when all four scores are inside the sweet spot. Acceptable potential is when it's a couple of percentage points below or a couple of percentage points above. And careful potential is when it's 5, 6, 7 points away from the sweet spot, because there isn't a training program, an educational program, a book, seminar, podcast, or webinar that can change behavior that much. So that it's a good rule of thumb to keep in the back of your mind. What ifs? What if this person does the deep dive, makes the decision, gets into something? What would their score look like 2 years after the fact? And in fact, in a lot of cases, Joel, when we create the benchmarks for franchisors, we like to come back in every 2 or 3 years and redo it, because the existing franchisees have got another couple of years under their belt, and we know that their scores are going to change. And because we created the profile, the attraction strategy to bring on new potential candidates most likely has changed, and we've had an influence in it, knowing the right words, the right colors, the right tonality to use when communicating with the candidates. So it, the psychologists call it test, retest. And, we like to do it. And we have noticed some significant changes for the better with a lot of these franchise companies that we deal with. Great. Joel, from the perspective of going through the training and the certification program and having your own account, what have you found is the most beneficial aspect of using the Navigator in dealing with candidates?
I've done several consultations now using the Connect Me just between when I started last week and this week. And it seems like the whole tone of the conversation changes when somebody's gone through this type of assessment. I think it increases, the quote-unquote the skin in the game. They've taken 10 minutes of their time before having the consultation with me, and that little act seems to totally change their attitude towards their interaction with me. I'm not quite sure the behavioral science that goes behind that, but and also it just gives me so much more information to work off of before I actually have the consultation, that it makes my questions much more targeted, and it gives me a lot more insights on on kind of where to steer them and where to go. I would say that the consultations I've had this week have probably been the best consultations I've had since I started. And I think a lot of it has to do with incorporating this profile and having them take the profile before I invest an hour into a phone call with them. It advances our relationship and the level of authenticity and credibility that I bring with me to another level, and I'm really enjoying it.
Great. Well, the behavioral sciences part of it goes to a root of everybody, and that's their fear. And each of these profiles, if you remember from going through the videos, and by the way, I strongly recommend that everybody go through those videos multiple times, because each time you go through it, something else is, some other light bulb is going to go off. But if we look at what an individual's fear is, it's going to vary depending upon what their dominant is. But overall, what it does, it takes the fear of being sold or manipulated out of the picture. And it creates a collaborative relationship, because now we're looking for fit, and we want to match them people to people. Your profile resembles the highest performing franchisees of these brands. We're not referring them, and it's not people to businesses. It's people to people. And that's a very comforting feeling. And when we reduce the fears and we develop comfort, you're right, attitude changes. And now they feel like you're on their team. You have their best efforts. It's not about you wanting to close a deal with the highest commission. It's about what's best for them. And we have found that that works not just in the candidates, but also in employment processes. It runs across the board because it's basic behavioral sciences. Great. I'm not sure how many people that will be listening to the webinar were able to either attend or listen to the webinar that I did last Wednesday for the International Franchise Association, their Wednesday Wise webinar, where they actually gave me an hour to talk about the impact of behavioral sciences on franchising. We had Rick Nonell, who's the founder and president and CEO of Window Genie, on the call. Rick picked up the Navigator so fast, it was amazing. And it was because he had used other assessments and it didn't work for him. The Navigator did. But in that webinar, and if anybody wants, shoot me an email and we'll send you the link. We just received it today. We're going to upload it onto our channel on YouTube. And one of the things that I talk about is how people go about making decisions. Some people are very fast to make decisions, and that's when they have a very high influence score. Some people are very slow to make decisions, and that's generally the associator and the contributor. And some people are optional, meaning they like to look at a lot of different options before they make a decision. So one of the ways you can summarize that whole process and really get to what's driving that individual is a question that I love, and that is, how will you know when you have found the right franchise? Is it something that you feel, which is kinesthetic? Is it something that you hear, auditory? Or is it something that you see, visual? So that's the first question. That'll also drive the way in which you mirror their needs and communicate with them. And then the other question I like to ask them is, tell me about tell me about the last time you went shopping for something. That gets into the optional and the procedural as well, where they either need to see a lot of options or they just want to get into a track and actually just run through it. The other is the learning style, and that's global to specific or specific to global. Global means somebody needs to see the big picture right away. They tend to be visionaries. And then they'll drill down into the specifics to find out what specifics it took to get to the big picture. Conversely, some people are specific to global. They want to see the details. And they need the details, and they'll go in and they'll start scrutinizing, and they'll talk this, and they'll get into this, and what's this, and what's that. And by doing that, it then gives them the global perspective or the big picture. I happen to have a partner that is specific to global. I'm global to specific. I'm big picture. I can see something instantly. He wants to see the details. I sent him an Excel worksheet yesterday, and he was already digging into the details. Oh, this word needs to be adjusted to this word, and this needs to be, he also happens to be a high associator. So those are the kinds of behavioral sciences techniques that you can use with your candidates to close more deals faster than ever before by working from the standpoint of eliciting from them as opposed to pushing data, pushing stuff at them. Great. Joel, welcome aboard. You have your account set up. Anytime you have any questions, don't hesitate. The good news is I'm always available. The bad news is I'm always available.
You are very responsive. I'll give you that. I'll send out an email like at 9 at night, and I'll just be like, "Yeah, I'll figure that out in the morning," and I'll respond at like 9:30 at night. Like, "Oh, all right, well."
Well, that's because it's only 6:30 my time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's still dinner time.
Yeah, and the good news is that when either the Diamondbacks or the Cubs are on ESPN, it becomes late night for you out there. The Cubs were on until like 12:45 in the morning, and here, it was okay time for me. Great. All right. Well, listen, Joel, welcome aboard. I'm not going to wish you luck. I will wish you success, because luck is what other people call people that are well prepared and make things happen. So thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you. And please, by all means, keep in touch.
All righty.
Okay. Thank you, Joel. By the way,
take care.
for everybody, we will convert the presentation to an MP4 and distribute that as we normally do. Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.